My name is Tessa Rogers, and this is my data collection technique, teacher-generated formative and summative assessments. First and foremost, formative assessments are assessments for learning. They drive instruction. Summative assessments are meant to evaluate an end of curriculum unit or a conclusion to a subject content. They are developed for specific purposes, often for a single use as a means of compiling various types of information, according to Mertler. I thought an example of that might be an end-of-unit math test where you're looking at different things like number sense, computation, word problems, all on a single summative assessment. They supply teachers with knowledge on how students are responding to possibly an instructional strategy or a curriculum innovation, according to Mills. Some of the unique processes and procedures for teacher-generated assessments would be that they're given weekly, monthly, quarterly to measure student progress, so certainly routinely, and that was from a study I found by Hoover and Abrams. They're meant to adapt curriculum assessments rather than administer them as is. So teachers look at maybe a reading series assessment or a math series assessments, and they a lot of the times will adapt them. They're frequently used by teachers to assess and adjust instruction. So the study that I found reported that the majority of teachers did use assessment to drive their instruction and possibly adjust to the learning of the students. I just had an example of that. Might be a mass and volume lab for measuring matter to see if they, the students understand mass and volume, and then the teacher would take the results of that and continue on with her instruction of those concepts. We also have a pre-test and post-test strategy that we could use in assessments. So a lot of times this measures the change as a result of exposing students to instructional treatment or intervention, according to Mertler. An example of this might be that you have a subtraction assessment before and then teach subtraction, and then you have a afterwards to see their progress. It is a quantitative technique. It is possibly one of the most common used by teachers, routine assessment practices in schools, and then they provide data that can be reduced to numbers. So teachers can use these quite easily to be able to quantify or calculate data, according to Mertler. But also I found in Mertler that it could be used as a qualitative technique if you are looking at existing records, so considered a classroom artifact in that sense. What types of questions would this technique best answer? How is the instructional strategy able to impact student achievement? What is the effect of the curriculum, whether it be new or improved, on student achievement? How can teachers better engage students to impact their learning? Would be some of them. Some of the strengths for teacher-made assessments, they can be adapted to address particular area of focus. So even if you're looking at something as small as, something as focused as, fact fluency of multiplication or division facts, you can focus it in on those in particular. They're routinely used by teachers to develop curriculum content, so they might be considered expert users of this particular technique. Students themselves can be more adept because of the frequency with which they are assessed. So they might be more comfortable seeing an assessment that they've seen on a weekly basis rather than maybe like the standardized tests that they might see just once a year. Some of the weaknesses are that teachers do usually make their own, so the question of whether these assessments are valid and reliable comes into play. Mertler also said that they should not be the only source of data, and that teachers need to be able to be, quote, savvy consumers of assessment data. So the teachers need to be able to look at this data and interpret it efficiently. Then subjectivity comes in because teachers are doing their own grading of these assessments. So concerns about validity. Do these assessments have the capacity to accurately measure the research questions? And do they have a substantial effect on the interpretation of the data? And then based on instrument content, according to Mertler, which was that the relationship between the content addressed on the assessment and then what it's trying to measure, does it have instrument content? Reliability, so since teachers do grade their own tests, are they reliable? And then you could have the same test and get different results. So possibly the retest to see whether or not the assessment is reliable. And then teachers have to be able to look at the internal consistency. So it's using a formula to test the reliability. The ethical perspective, educational tests are listed under exemptions for research, but that doesn't mean we still aren't looking at whether or not children are harmed during the process of administering these assessments. So that has to always be at the forefront, with the ultimate goal being student learning. So questioning whether or not these assessments will help with student learning, and our action research should always be something that we are questioning. And then I found this quote from Mertler: valid test is always reliable, but a reliable test is not necessarily valid to be worthy of note. And here are my references. I am very much looking forward to your feedback.